In this video, I am going to be unpacking South Korea's capitalization and commercialization of soft masculinity within K-pop male idols. First, I'm going to provide a brief introduction to K-pop and describe what soft masculinity looks like. Then I am going to provide a brief summary and introduction to readings by Matlon and Connell, which are the readings I'm going to be using to analyze South Korea's commercialization of soft masculinity. In section 1, I'm going to talk about how K-pop utilizes K-pop male idols as commodities of self-masculinity. K-pop male idols lose privacy within their personal lives and engage in aesthetic labor. In section 2, I'm going to talk about how K-pop's portrayal of soft masculinity within Western society has both negative and positive impacts on Western audiences' conceptions of masculinity. Then I'm going to conclude this video by just sharing my takeaways and thoughts on the topic. K-pop is South Korea's biggest entertainment industry that has gained global attention by drawing from diverse influences like Black African American culture, Japanese and American pop, creating catchy songs, outstanding dance performances, fashion, and captivating visuals. BTS, one of the biggest boy bands globally, played a huge role in K-pop becoming a global phenomenon. Now I'm going to explain what masculinity looks like in K-pop. Male idols wear makeup, usually emphasizing their porcelain white skin color, color contact lenses, and have a versatile fashion style, where K-pop idols are seen wearing clothing pieces that are considered feminine. They are groomed very well, no body hair anywhere. They change their hairstyles and color their hair often. They do cute childlike expressions and behavior. They come off as clean, delicate, soft, yet masculine. Well, masculine is, I guess, questionable depending on what audience is viewing K-pop male idols' masculinity. Next, I am going to introduce the two readings I'll be using to analyze South Korea's capitalization and commercialization of soft masculinity in K-pop. So the first reading is called A Man Among Other Men, The Crisis of Black Masculinity and Racial Capitalism by Jordana Matlon. In this chapter, Matlon discusses the consequences men within Abidjan society endure in their occupation of being a vendor and discusses how their masculinity, in addition to their race, positions them in a marginalized position within a capitalistic society, while also highlighting how masculinity can be used as a means to be oppressive. In the second reading, Masculinities and Globalization by R.W. Connell, Connell offers a framework to discuss the ways in which masculinity originates from capitalism and imperialism, how men's gender practices are not fixed, exposing how its structures evolves through history and changes locally. Most importantly, she helps readers understand that masculinity is a gender practice that becomes standardized and institutionalized everywhere in the world. Connell wants to provide more concepts and ways of thinking to really understand how masculinity looks different in different societies while understanding the dynamics of power to certain masculinities. In the reading BTS Alternative Masculinity and Its Discontents by Gooyong Kim, argues that BTS global success is through the means of commodifying the male body that caters to a female audience whose tastes and fantasies are also constructed and legitimated by the biopolitical nature of neoliberalism. She emphasizes her argument through showing how the capitalization of soft masculinity results in the loss of privacy for K-pop male idols, K-pop male idols practicing aesthetic labor and sometimes called grooming routine, and K-pop industries commercializing the performance and construction of the soft masculinity within K-pop. So now I'm going to talk about the loss of privacy for K-pop male idols. Kim explains that BTS keeps audiences hooked by providing content that are tailored to fulfill fans' desires to know the idols' intimate, real lives, which boosts their fantasy of becoming up close and personal. So Kim is exposing how BTS, like other K-pop male idols, lives are commodified in order to appease the desires and fantasies of fans. K-pop male idols practicing aesthetic labor / grooming labor and routine. Kim talks about BTS feminized physical appearance. She explains how they have bodies that are free of hair, sweat, and odor, and trendy clothes and fashion items. She further explains how their bodies and physical appearance are objects being watched and symbolizes an unthreatening masculinity attractive to the female gaze. Therefore, their physical appearance and bodies become commodified because they are perfectly sculpted to appease what Kim calls the appetite for alternative, exotic masculinity. I call this aesthetic labor / grooming labor because within the role of being a K-pop idol, you are expected to engage in a grooming routine that meets the standard and expectations of a K-pop idol. A K-pop male idol's success, popularity, and attraction and appeal is heavily influenced by their physical appearance and looks. Similarly, this connects to Matlin's idea of how a vendor's physical appearance determines their worth and value. In Abidjan society, as the quality of what a vendor sold improved, so did their social value, respect, and value improved within society. In both Abidjan and K-pop's industry, surface level aspects an idol's physical appearance and a vendor's physical appearance that replicates what they're selling becomes commodified. Both of their physical attributes are shaped around what they can offer, where their value is tied to their physical appearance, bodies, and looks, where societal thoughts and opinions dictated the worth of their body and masculinity. Next, Kim exposes how BTS feminized masculinity is the industry's strategic marketing venture to find what is appealing and profitable. Soft masculinity is one of the foundational elements of a K-pop group. I would also echo that not only is BTS masculinity feminized, it is also described by many, including Kim, as non-threatening and female-friendly. In this way, you can witness how the K-pop industry is very intentional about using K-pop male idols as agents in cultivating a portrayal of masculinity that is appealing to their target audience, which satisfy female fans' fantasies and desire of an alternative, soft and non-threatening masculinity. Connell argues that global mass media is a vector for the globalization of gender. Through popular entertainment, stereotypical gender images are made attractive for marketing purposes, including utilizing the element of fantasy. Through creating an alternative masculinity, they're appealing to the fantasies of female fans' desire of a softer and exotic masculinity, staying away from the traditional masculinity, or I would argue, the traditional Western masculinity. The K-pop industry builds the appeal and aesthetic of soft masculinity through dance moves, clothing, hairstyles, makeup, and other visual elements. Not to mention, Connell also argues that men's bodies are positioned in the gender order and enter the gender process through body reflexive practices in which bodies are both objects and agents, including sexuality, violence, and labor. K-pop male idols' masculinity and bodies are being commodified and utilized to construct soft masculinity. The construction of soft masculinity becomes commodity through the performance of labor, aesthetic and grooming labor, and through conducting fan service. In the reading Unpacking K-pop in America, The Subversive Potential of Male K-pop Idol Soft Masculinity by Jenny Lee, Rachel Carey Lee, and Ji-hoon Park, conducted a study on American fans of K-pop bands to explore how racialized masculinity impacts the ideas and experiences of American K-pop fans, considering how the masculinity portrayed in K-pop is different from the hegemonic masculinity in Western media. Let's begin with the positive impacts. The authors argue that the multi-layered masculinity could challenge hegemonic notions of white masculinity and position K-pop male idols as objects of desire within Western society. The authors highlight the ways in which Asian men are feminized and demasculinized because the physical appearance and ways of practicing their masculinity are viewed as feminine within Western society. Therefore, the soft masculinity presented in K-pop male idols combats the emasculation of Asian men in the Western society, saying that their fans find K-pop male idols' soft masculinity attractive. To add on, the portrayal of soft masculinity in K-pop male idols has encouraged their fans to imagine masculinity that goes beyond the rigidity of American masculinity. The authors point out how fans began to realize that men don't have to be tall, buff, and play football to be masculine. Some male fans express how soft masculinity in K-pop male idols have encouraged them to view masculinity as being themselves. The portrayal of soft masculinity helps Western fans understand that masculinity can come in many different shapes and forms. As a K-pop fan myself, The portrayal of soft masculinity in the K-pop industry has helped me to think of masculinity as more dynamic and fluid. However, Western K-pop fans feel ashamed and embarrassed about being K-pop fans because their friends and family perceived K-pop as weird and K-pop male idols as being too feminine and gay. One participant explains how their friends and families think that K-pop male idols cannot be feminine without being interested in men, while some male fans point out that they were seen as being gay for liking K-pop. The negative stigma around being a K-pop fan highlights how xenophobia and homophobia persist within Western society, but also points out how alternative masculinity influences non-K-pop fans to create distance between specifically hegemonic white masculinity and non-hegemonic masculinity. In the same way, Matlon describes how men in Abidjan society avoided selling and doing business around friends and families because of the negative stigma associated with being a vendor. People in Abidjan society took vending as an indicator of poor character and described vendors as low-class citizens. I would also argue that Abidjan society treated vendors so poorly because their labor wasn't seen as masculine enough. They were being punished for not meeting the expectations and standards of what it takes to be considered a real and respectable man in Abidjan society. Equivalently, K-pop fans want to keep their involvement a secret because of the negative stigmas and stereotypes associated with soft masculinity. Also, the authors point out that K-pop and K-pop masculinities can be seen as dominant culture's way to maintain hegemony. The negative stigma and stereotypes associated with soft masculinity and masculinity of Asian men represents the hierarchy amongst masculinities. Fans in the study emasculated K-pop idols, especially when they described how the aesthetic of gayness, femininity, and effeminate masculinity is part of Korean culture. The fans' views are problematic because it reinforces the stereotypical representation of Asian men and Asian cultures within the US. When asked what would happen if white men emulated soft masculinity seen in K-pop, participants argued it would be awkward and unnatural, therefore reinforcing the naturalness of femininity within Asian men. The authors exposed the marginal position of racialized Asian masculinity in the US. This connects to Connell's concept of hierarchy and hegemony within masculinity. She states that many men live in a state of some tension with or distance from hegemonic masculinity. Others are taken as exemplars of hegemonic masculinity and are required to live up to it strenuously. In this instance, white hegemonic masculinity is the standard, especially within Western society, while other masculinity hold a marginal position. But most importantly, white and US masculinity holds dominance and superiority over other racialized and non-US masculinity. Soft masculinity presented by male idols is a strategic and intentional tool that contributed to the fast-growing economic status and power of the nation. However, its portrayal does not mean that it has cultivated immense change in hegemonic masculinity within the global north. Although K-pop fans may be able to expand their ideas and thoughts around masculinity and create a movement of seeing Asian men as attractive within Western society, there are still some resistance to the masculinity portrayed by Asian men and K-pop male idols. The negative stigma around K-pop soft masculinity and Asian men masculinity highlights Western xenophobic sentiments and reinforcement of white hegemonic masculinity. Through analyzing soft masculinity by utilizing readings by Matlin and Connell as a framework, it has been interesting to think about how masculinity is constructed through the body and media, how there are power dynamics within different masculinities, how race is involved in the cultivation of masculinity. Additionally, although South Korea is capitalizing off of soft masculinity, I still think it's important to provide representation of alternative masculinity because it allows people to think about how they understand masculinity and how it's practiced and looks different in other cultures. Masculinity is fluid, complex, and dynamic. For those reasons, I truly believe that K-pop success in the US demonstrates how some people within Western society are beginning to expand their understanding of masculinity. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.